3, 2, 1.
How about we do it again?
6, 7, 4, 3, 2, 1. I think I followed it.
Okay, let's try one more
I
time.
definitely
Ready?
making review. Making review. Making review.
Say 6,
6,
5,
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
You have found your way to part 2 of the Rank and Review Friday the 13th Retrospective. This is your host and random Canadian Larry Parsons, and this episode, returning guest Lee Beckman and I are going to continue working our way through the entire Friday the 13th series. In the first half, we made it to part 7, so we'll be starting right where we left off with Friday the 13th, part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in and listening to Rank and Review. Please do us the service of telling your friends about the show. Please find us on Facebook, find us on iTunes, subscribe to the podcast, and send feedback to rankandreview@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. That's it. No more ado. Here comes part 2.
Friday the 13th, Part 8. Jason Takes Manhattan. Now, New York has a new problem.
Okay, well, Friday the 13th, Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan.
Don't you mean Jason Takes Vancouver?
Yeah, I was about to say, it's probably more a lie of a title than the final chapter was.
Yeah.
Because this movie filmed 2 days in New York, and the rest of it was all in and around Vancouver.
Yeah.
The place you go to shoot horror movies cheaply.
Yeah. At this point, Paramount had almost given up on Jason Voorhees. You could see that the end was coming.
Yeah.
The end was nigh.
This is indeed the last of the Paramount phase of the Friday the 13th. And I mean, I guess from a marketing and sort of a concept, standpoint, it's not without promise. The idea of Jason Voorhees surrounded by millions of people in a bustling metropolis, like how would he handle it?
Mm-hmm.
How would they handle it? Yeah. The problem is that's not what this movie is.
No.
It's a lie.
Yes.
The movie lies once again.
Well, I mean, really, not even sort of Jason Takes Vancouver. It's Jason on a boat. A lot of this movie, and I mean, legend goes that, they were going into this project initially with a bigger budget, but it was, cut dramatically. So they had to trim, not only, change locations, but trim some of the city scenes.
It just seemed like the more they peeled back, the less tenable it was to do this movie.
Yeah.
If you don't have the budget to make Jason Takes Manhattan, don't do Jason Takes Manhattan. Do Jason Takes Vancouver, know? But
or just, Jason is finally back out of Crystal Lake again.
Yeah. And is Crystal Lake a lake now? Or is it connected to a river or some sort of chain of water that would somehow lead it to the ocean, which would somehow... and again, they don't even try to explain it. And maybe it's dumb of me at this point to expect that they would. But it's just like they had the concept, go make a movie, but we're not going to give you any money, but you can't have any real violence in it, go make your movie.
Yeah.
What do you do? What do you do with that?
You make a movie.
Yeah.
Hey, I mean, who is the director of this?
The man who directed it, he worked with the original TV series of Friday the 13th.
Yeah.
Friday the 13th, Part 8. was written and directed by Rob Hedden. And there was a TV series, Friday the 13th, that of course wasn't about Jason Voorhees. It was more of an anthology horror movie, but it was all made in Canada. Cronenberg did episodes, and what's his face? The Sweet Hereafter.
Adam
Agoyan did some episodes. So anyway, he got the gig because he knew the producer liked his work, and we're doing another Friday, welcome aboard.
Yeah.
And, like, there are a lot of large and loud problems with the movie, but I'm not going to put it all on him, even though he is indeed the writer and director, and that seems, if not to him...
Well, I mean, the idea of taking, a very violent serial killer into, one of the murder capitals of the world was sort of, I could totally see the idea was there. Life and decisions decided to, sort of alter the film. So, yeah, I do feel, sort of sorry for him that he didn't get, his true vision up. But
yeah. But after a point, like I said, once they've made the decision, okay, now instead of 3/4 of your movie happening in New York, now 1/4 of your movie, or basically the last 15 minutes-ish, will happen in New York. And even that, most of that are back alleys in rainy Vancouver.
Yeah.
There's definitely the big Times Square sequence, which is legit. But other than that, and a few exterior shots of Lady Liberty, yeah.
And it's interesting, the film looks different. You could totally tell that, it was shot in the States, obviously, because of the New York stuff. But it looked a little different. The second that, it went to the back alleys, which was clearly Vancouver, it looked different.
Yeah.
What can you explain? What is it?
Well, I think they had 2 days to shoot in New York, and they were probably the 2 most expensive days of production.
Yeah.
So they were the most considered and the most, they brought in, the A equipment and the A team for that day. Anyway, we've talked around the movie, but not really about it. The premise, as such as it is, Jason is clumsily resuscitated he happened to die on top of an electrical cord, which gets anchored, and he is once again reignited Frankenstein style. He kills a couple of lovers on a boat.
Yep.
Special award to the female victim on the boat for stupidest victim in Friday the 13th.
She decides to hide in the boat.
She hides on the boat. You're surrounded by water. The shoreline is there. You have time to decide where you're going to hide, and you hide on the boat. You don't swim for your life. Stupid.
Yeah.
Anyway, the graduating class of Crystal Lake High School, which is apparently a thing now too, is going to go on a cruise ship to Vancouver. There you go. To Vank York.
Yes.
And guess who hitches a ride?
Jason.
The only kind of clever, in quotation, sort of new elements added to this is that our survivor girl in this movie seems to have some sort of psychic link with Jason. When she was a young girl, she was being taught how to swim by her evil uncle. She's thrown into the lake. She has a vision that young Jason tries to drown her. And they have the same weird sort of echo psychic connection. So weird echoes of part 7 here.
Yeah.
Reverberating in another psychic link. She doesn't have any telekinetic powers herself, but she seems to be able to understand psychically Jason's backstory and where Jason's coming from.
Yeah, no, it's sort of a weird little side story. Almost didn't need it, but I mean, it's interesting that it does sort of kind of connect with 7 a little bit, that here is another being that somehow, is psychically linked to Jason Voorhees in some sort of way.
This is also the last Friday the 13th of the 80s, and even though it's the dying day of the 80s this is being made, it's in a way one of the most 80s feeling of the Friday the 13th movies. There's a lot of loud and proud shoulder pads and super big, rock star hair.
Yeah.
And it's sort of hard to take the characters seriously. For me, I would just it's somewhere between nostalgic and shame, because once upon a time when I was 13 or 14, these people would have been cool, right?
Yeah. Well, this is the time of Arsenio Hall.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. No, even like I said, the lighting and the look of the film is very much 80s. We have to throw some love out to and along in a great line of or history of yet another star before they were somewhat famous. Kelly Hu is in this film.
No, that's right.
Who went on to like X-Men and Scorpion King, and
She's on a TV show now,
Yeah.
too. Yeah, I don't know. I think this is also a sign that Paramount is a whipped puppy as far as the ratings board. They're not even really trying anymore
Yeah.
as far as trying to get away with anything with the gore. They know they're not going to be allowed to show the gore, so they don't even really have much to it.
yeah.
Um,
It starts to feel very exhausted. They're running out of ideas when in some ways they didn't have to.
yeah.
We've
We've seen all these kids before.
Yeah.
The premise could have been novel if he got to New York and actually did some business there. But I'm also a little bit uncomfortable, frankly, and I'll admit this, to have him outside of Camp Crystal Lake.
Yeah.
In a way, I just, keep it simple, stupid.
Yeah. They almost. I mean, I understand why they have to do it.
They're going to take him farther away from Crystal Lake in subsequent entries, of course. But, I don't know. I think more successfully.
Yeah.
Any standout kills for you from Point?
Well, I think it has one of the best kills of the series. The fight up on the top of the building, the boxing match, if you will. You see the death coming a mile away. The second that sequence sort of starts, he's like, Jason's gonna punch his head off, knock his block off.
Yeah.
I mean, not a gory scene per se because of the MPA.
It's funny, but there is definitely, once they get to New York,
Yeah.
there's sort of a series of events where we get inevitably down to our last girl.
Yeah.
And it seems like almost people go willingly to their deaths because that's the scene that we're in. This is the scene where I die, so I stop thinking rationally and die. you know? I mean, again, but it was more funny than scary, and
Yes.
I don't think for me it would rank high in the list of best kills in this series. It might rank high in best kills in this particular movie.
Yeah. Really?
But
I just sort of hadn't really seen Jason. I've been waiting for Jason to actually punch someone to death.
yeah, this is one of the benefits that's still echoing from Part 6 when they officially made him Super Jason. So his strength is just whatever it needs to be to accomplish the cool kill.
Yeah.
And use it in that event. Yeah, no, you can't punch somebody's head off. No, you can't. But we enjoy that, and we get a head camera. We get head vision as it spins off the top of this huge.
So I mean, I applauded that. I thought that was kind of cute and charming.
Going towards the end of the Symphony of the Banal, I think also we are treated to one of the worst ending finale moments in
Tis true.
Friday the 13th history, and one of the most brutal, savage breaking of the lexicon that we will suffer until the next movie, in which Jason Voorhees speaks a line of dialogue.
Yeah.
Let's forget the premise that is established here, as ridiculous as it is, that the New York City sewer system is flushed with toxic waste every night at midnight, or whatever that plot point was.
Yeah.
Let's just forget that and say, okay, we accept that's a thing that would happen for some reason.
Yeah.
When Jason is hit by this toxic waste, he reverts to his child self.
Yeah.
And right before the wave hits him, he says, in a little boy's voice, "Please, Mommy, I don't want to drown."
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, it's like seeing Darth Vader as that annoying little kid in The Phantom Menace, you know? You're just like, not only is he not scary, I hate myself for ever thinking that he was scary at this point.
Yeah.
So a lot of negative hits to this movie.
Yeah, I mean, it was a series of unfortunate events, but there's also some bad decisions to it. I mean, it's a Friday the 13th movie. The red shirts, if you will, aren't that memorable. Just with the exception, of course, Kelly Hu and
there's a vagueness to it too.
Yeah.
Like, how many people are on this cruise ship? Because initially it seems like the whole graduating class is on it.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, a lot of kills happened off camera.
Yeah.
But, sometimes there's 7 or 8 kids, and then, by the time they get to New York, presumably the people who make it to the shore are the only people left. So, I don't know. It's sloppy. If you don't have the means to make Jason Takes Manhattan,
don't make it. Well, yeah.
Horror has many faces. Death wears many different masks. But pure evil wears only one. And this is your final chance to see it. Jason Goes to Hell. The final Friday.
Jason Goes to Hell.
You knew it was coming. You knew at some point they were going to explore this avenue, so...
Did you? Did you see this chapter coming?
Well...
Because I've got to say, I did not see this chapter coming.
Well, I knew that New Line had bought it, and then they wanted to do something with the project. They wanted to do, at some point, Freddy versus Jason, but they had to start somewhere.
New Line, at this point, New Line Cinema is establishing itself as sort of the House of Horrors.
Yeah.
They're already known as the house that Freddy built because of Nightmare on Elm Street, but they've acquired the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise, and they've now acquired Jason. They can't use Friday the 13th. That's why subsequent films will be Jason, but not Friday the 13th. But they have this character, they have the franchise to an extent.
Yeah,
it's sort of a splinter franchise at this point, but we'll call it canon.
Yeah.
Sean S. Cunningham is now
back as producer.
Back as a producer, and I'm sure he got his paycheck for the previous 7 movies.
Yeah.
But this time he's more taken an interest, and I think for right or wrong, he decided we got to do something different this time around, and I think that maybe. Arguably too different. Jeremy, my friend J. Adrian Cook, and I did this Terrible Twos episode where we talked about how there are bad sequels that are bad because they're just derivative, and there are bad sequels that are bad because they tried to do something way out of field of what this genre or this particular film franchise wanted to be. And I think this is very much that end of the spectrum. But I said it then and I'll say it again now. In a way, I respect this failure more.
Yeah.
In that you're at least trying something.
Yeah.
It was an ambitious failure, but I do think it was a failure.
Yeah, well...
what do you think of Jason
The
Goes
first
to Hell?
and the biggest error that this filmmaker did, and this is a guy who grew up loving Jason. He was, an assistant. He started off as a glorified gopher and worked his way up, and had worked on a Friday the 13th film from Paramount. And here he was, doing it. But the biggest mistake he made was he thought that the audience could wait to see Jason for the longest time. You saw him for a little bit at the beginning, and then you don't see Jason, the actual Jason, up until the end of the movie.
The first kill in the movie is Jason.
Yes.
He gets exploded.
Yeah.
And it was a surprise and like a shocking way to start the movie, but right away we're like, okay, well, what now?
Yeah.
And the what now becomes increasingly problematic with each following scene.
Yeah.
More so than any other movie in the Friday the 13th canon, and this is rife with continuity errors all throughout all of the movies. This is a chapter of Friday the 13th which is acknowledged by nothing that comes before it and nothing that comes after it.
Yeah.
This is an alternate universe, Twilight Zone Friday the 13th. And as a curio, as a what the fuck movie, as a slap your forehead, that just happened movie, put in the popcorn and laugh, I can almost recommend it as a so bad it's good, crazy movie.
Yeah.
Because it is crazy.
Yeah.
And there are some things that they come correct with that Paramount hadn't been able to in the last few frequent chapters.
Yeah. Oh no. I mean,
sex and violence is back on the menu.
Yeah.
In a big, big way.
Yeah. No. It's like they were making up for what had happened with 7 and 8, and 6, 7, and 8, really.
Yeah.
And they brought back the red, they brought back the crunch, and they brought back the boobs.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I have to give it that.
But in a way, it made it more of a tease because we wanted that. But it still wasn't the full deal.
Not only did it didn't work, and they totally underestimated
the importance of Jason.
The importance of Jason, really. The star of the movie. It's like it would be like going to a James Bond film and you don't see James Bond up until the end. Well, really, the whole
James Bond's soul gets transformed into a transported into a robot or
Yes.
something ridiculous like that.
Yeah.
You would have to eat such a bitter pill to get into the rest of the movie that it would be hard.
Yeah.
And in this case, we're supposed to accept that all of a sudden Jason is not the, cursed, drowned, resuscitated body of this drowned little boy, but this demonic slug creature entity
Yes.
that goes from person to person and can possess them. So Jason will jump bodies throughout this movie, and we
Yeah.
won't know necessarily right away, are they or aren't they Jason. The dead giveaway of whether or not it is Jason is if he's trying to kill you,
Yes.
and if he is really hard to kill himself. Eventually the body will get damaged enough he'll decide to jump ship again.
Yeah.
This premise reminds me very much of an 80s cult weirdo movie, The Hidden.
I remember The Hidden.
Kyle MacLachlan.
The Hidden, yeah, The Hidden's good though.
Yeah, but as far as this alien creature going body to body,
that's a very much a hidden kind of thing. Yeah, no, I get it.
The similar concept here. I'm not necessarily saying that they stole it directly, but
Yeah.
it's a similar sort of.
Yeah.
And it does seem to belong into a science fiction alien movie much more comfortably in my Friday the 13th movie.
Yes.
Damn it. But again, they're consciously trying to change things. All of our cast are in their 30s or 40s, more or less.
Yes.
So we don't have the, same gaggle of,
Dumb teenagers.
dumb,
rich.
pretty faces to
Yeah.
die. And in a way, that's kind of reflective. It's just a little
And it is
more-
a little bit refreshing, but for the most part, we don't really connect a whole bunch with the so-called red shirts or secondary
Most of them
characters.
are shrill and unlikable, so we
Yeah.
don't have to care too much when they die.
Yeah.
But because they're shrill and likable, we don't like them before they die, so
Yeah.
that makes those scenes sort of harder.
Yeah.
I'm going to try and take a stab at this plot.
Sure.
Okay, Jason is blown up. The mortician or the guy who's doing the autopsy
Somehow gets possessed.
gets possessed of Jason. A bunch of people are killed. He escapes into the woods, kills some kids who are having sex without a condom.
Yes.
They deserved it practically. They were asking for it. And then we get into this backstory that if it can get itself inside a blood relative,
Yeah.
in this case either his sister, her daughter, or her granddaughter, who now is a baby girl. And we are introduced to the baby's father, who's now separated from the mother but trying to reconnect with them. He sort of shows up in town the same time Jason comes back, and a lot of mysterious deaths happen, and misunderstandings and blah 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 blah. Mayhem ensues. It's very confusing, and it's even more confusing with the addition of this strange bounty hunter figure
Yes.
figure who shows
Clayton
up.
Shaw, I think his name.
Clayton Shaw, and he's like crazy. Arguably, maybe the craziest person in the movie. Maybe crazier.
He
than
has this scene
Jason.
in this. He has this scene in this movie that, in a lot of ways, doesn't make a lot of sense for him to do that. Like, he's essentially asking. He'll eventually ask this young man, our sort of other protagonist, if you will, to join in on the hunt with Jason Voorhees, and proceeds to break his hand getting information.
In
from
order
him.
to get information from this man, you have to offer your fingers to be broken by him.
What is the point? It's almost counterproductive. But
No
that's
point.
another decision that I kind of went.
There's lots of
What
scenes
is
in
the
this
point?
movie like that. Whereas, why did that happen?
Yeah.
That scene where he takes the sheriff's deputy hostage and shaves him.
Yeah.
That weird scene where he's all naked and bound down and shaved before they pass the demon seed between each other. Is this weird,
Yeah.
dark homoerotic sequence that happens in the movie?
Yeah.
And this is what I'm talking about. I mean, there is bizarre shit to be seen throughout the movie.
Yeah.
And when we say the violence is back, the violence is back.
Oh no,
Like,
it's yeah.
it is very red, and it, like I said, that's further frustrating because it's so close to where we wanted to be for a Friday the 13th, and yet clearly not a Friday the 13th movie that we're used to, And is it our fault? Should we blame this movie for daring to be different? Well, I don't know. I think that if this was chapter 3 or 4, maybe we could say okay, but this is chapter 9 at this point.
Yeah.
It had been really established.
Yeah.
The formula had been established.
Yeah.
And at this point, to do such a game-changing episode, I don't know where you go forward from here.
Yeah.
And it's also strange when you consider they're basically buying time for Freddy versus Jason at this point, which is something that they wanted to happen, but they was still in pre-production hell. So why get rid of the Jason visage in that respect as well? Because you need to get back to the basic Jason that we understand for Freddy vs. Jason to happen.
Yeah.
Frustrating, strange.
It's a noble failure. The director clearly made a whole series of bad decisions that, good for you for trying, but it was the wrong decision. It's kind of this, like I said, there's some scenes that don't make any sense at all. Or at least, motivations by characters that you're like, a real person almost wouldn't do that. It was just sort of bizarre in that regard. The whole side story that, he's this sleep demon that also showed up in Freddy's Dead. They're trying to connect those two.
We're also in this movie, I think, seeing a lot of cross-pollinating from other franchises. The idea that the evil is actually some sort of demon seed we start seeing in later Freddy Krueger Nightmare on Elm Street movies. Strange but true. In the Halloween franchise, we have not only the idea that the evil can be passed on to a child, which is touched on in Friday the 13th, but the strange, mysterious black bounty hunter who shows up that seems to have more knowledge than they should and is never really properly explained. This is a strange thing that is shared now by both the franchise of Friday the 13th and Halloween.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a point for or against the movie, but it's just another of many strange things.
Yeah, no, like I said, they were sort of promising that, of course, this would be, the last one, because he's going to hell, but we all know that's a lie, even, going in, it's like, no. So, eventually Jason was gonna have to end up in hell anyways when they finally do stop it, but why not?
Well, to again further speak about the strangeness of this particular entry in the franchise, the demon seed Jason, after entering the vagina of the corpse of his dead sister, is reborn, and when he is reborn, he takes the visage of the Jason we know and love, complete with hockey mask. And he proceeds to have a fist fight with our protagonist, who, interesting enough, punches him repeatedly in the hockey mask face with his handful of broken fingers, predictably.
Yes, because he's a super genius now.
And we also get crossover from Evil Dead. That was the other one.
The Necronomicon is also in this movie,
Another property owned by New Line Cinema at that time. So it just seemed like it was a lot of distracting elements saying, remember these other movies? Remember these other better movies? And drawing attention to itself. Which is strange because we're not even in a post-Scream landscape yet, but it almost would have, you could almost think that they were
wink, wink, nudge, was starting to really...
Some of it was getting shoehorned in, or it felt like it was.
Yeah.
Because at times it was taking itself dead seriously, and other times it was a blatant satire.
Yeah.
And the whole Crystal Lake, or Camp Crystal Lake embracing Jason, they're selling hamburgers shaped like hockey masks and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Again, we see parallels of this in one of the last Nightmare on Elm Street movies. It's strange mishmash of ideas. It's bizarre and fascinating and absurd, but it's kind of, to my mind, not really a Friday the 13th movie.
Well, it does feel very much like the bastard child of the Friday the 13th series. The one that's really,
it's the redheaded
really
stepchild. It really is.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's hard to say, something like that. But, I mean, to me, it's canon. But it definitely, feels very different than a Friday the 13th film.
It definitely left me like...
It's a good, noble failure, is what I kind of say. Good for you for trying something different. You've got to, obviously, shake up the tree, somewhat. But...
they echoed what was to come with Jason's mask being dragged to hell by Freddy Krueger's clawed hand. But yet, there was one more movie to come before we got to that main event. And that's coming up.
Yep.
In the year 2455, on a routine training mission, a team of students is about to discover a life form frozen in time.
Wow. They're on their way back. Prepare for docking and power up the lab.
You brought him on board?
Everything's under control, ma'am.
What the
hell is going on?
Jason Voorhees, that's what's going on. He's an unstoppable killing machine.
Guys, it's okay. He just wanted his machete back.
How do we get off the ship?
I don't know.
Look, we're gonna be all right.
What? Are you high?
Uh-oh.
Well, traditionally, space is where franchises go to die, really, in a lot of ways.
Once you've hit that trademark, you've definitely, as the term goes, jumped at the shark.
Critters has gone there. Leprechauns has gone there.
Hellraiser's gone there.
Hellraiser went there, although I guess Hellraiser had like 6 chapters past it. So, I mean, like, they persevered.
Yeah.
But it's a tricky number.
Yeah.
And this is another weird case in the long, long journey to get Freddy vs. Jason made. They had to fill the dance card just in the time in between.
Yeah.
And they didn't want to step on the toes of Freddy vs. Jason. So in order to get out of that movie's way, and in order to, kind of get over the embarrassing questions asked by the previous chapter of Jason Goes to Hell, they decided they're going to jump ahead. And they're going to go Jason X, Jason in space.
You.
This is another Canadian-made Friday the 13th movie. Loud and Proud. The late director Jim Isaac.
He's late?
He has passed away, yes.
When did that happen?
Relatively recently. He directed this. He directed a movie called Skinwalkers, and he directed Pig Hunt. I think a movie called Pig Hunt. But he died very suddenly. He's no longer with us.
What happened?
I don't know the specifics. I don't know. I guess it points for being ambitious. This is definitely going to be a different Friday the 13th, but it will be not as different in a way as the previous chapter.
You know what? This movie was set up to me really hate it.
Yeah.
Like, I thought that, this is going to be a terrible movie. Like, this is like obviously number 10. They're, clearly, you knew that space was coming at some point.
Few franchises get to chapter 10.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you've accomplished something no matter what. But yes, I mean, you're beyond derivative at this point, right?
Like I said, I was set up to, really, really hate this movie and was pleasantly surprised.
Well, I mean, I don't know if I'll go say pleasantly surprised.
Well, I enjoyed it a heck of a
lot
lot more than I should have. I'll say that much. And there's some... this is obviously post-Scream, so it's this sort of, I don't want to say self-deprecating humor, but definitely somewhat satire.
A lot of the stuff that I like in the movie is on purpose.
Yeah.
But I will also say a lot of the stuff that I like in this movie is not on purpose. Some of the computer graphics in it
are terrible.
It's terrible.
It's a cheaply made movie, you can tell. They had a very small budget, but they went and they worked with it.
But it also seems to belong snugly in the long, rich tradition of bizarre Canadian horror movies, and specifically slasher movies. They're just a little bit weirder than they need to be, and a little just... The choices are odd.
Yeah.
And sort of to represent this Canadian-made Friday the 13th movies, the first person killed in this film is Canadian auteur David Cronenberg.
And you've got to give that film that.
Yeah.
I know you're not as much as a lover of Cronenberg as I am, so I know
I've warmed to him as a filmmaker, but as an actor, I don't know.
Well, he's not, an amazing actor.
Monotone. But he's got one scene and he dies. And you know what? If I was in a position where I could be, yes, I'd like to be in the new Friday the 13th movie. My condition is that I die on screen.
Yeah.
If you can do that, if you can make that phone call to make that happen, you make that phone call, right? Because I want to be that.
Jason X gets so many things right. I mean, we were sort of waiting, and they sort of teased at, what would happen when Jason would go sort of, put his dukes up with a whole platoon of mercenaries, if you will.
We do get to see sort of basically Jason versus the Marines from Aliens.
Yeah.
And that's a fun sequence.
Yeah.
And we get to see Jason fight a cyborg, and that's a fun sequence. My personal favorite involves Jason in the holodeck.
Yes.
Where they buy some time by making a false circa 1980 Camp Crystal Lake complete with topless chicks drinking booze and smoking weed.
Best kill of the flick, honestly. It is.
Arguably, I would say the best kill is the woman who gets frozen and then her face shattered.
Close second.
That was pretty classy, too.
Close second, but it's the facts, and it's not even an original kill. I mean, he is already thrown a woman in a sleeping bag across a tree. But it's the whole that they're giggling and enjoying it as he's like, as he's doing it. Ow, 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 hee, whack, whack.
So
the sheer joy of that scene just makes me sort of smile.
But they got some mileage out of the premise. If you're gonna do Jason in space, do Jason in space, and they do.
Yeah, they knew exactly what they were doing, what they were making, and knew that people aren't going to take it as Pulitzer Prize winning material.
Yeah.
Do with it what you will. And I mean, it's mercifully short. Like, how long is it?
Well, it's about 90 minutes, but considering the amount of information that gets packed into this, first of all, we start the movie Jason's caught.
Yeah.
And going to be studied because they've failed to execute him. They can't find a way to kill him.
Yeah.
He escapes, but at the last minute they manage to freeze him. He and the scientist gets frozen. 500 or so years later, whenever it is, a spaceship on a reconnaissance mission. Not even that. They're just sort of collecting garbage on the wasteland that was Earth. It's basically a school class collecting artifacts of the Earth that was.
Yeah.
They bring back Jason and thaw him out. And bad shit happens.
Yeah.
Basically is the premise. And tonally it's a little... There are sequences of the film where they're trying to be funny, and sometimes it's successful and sometimes it's not. But I think that what really adds charm to the movie are the sequences where they're not trying to be funny and they just end up being accidentally.
Yeah.
The whole sequence where the ship destroys the base that they're headed to is like comically unconvincing as far as the special effects.
Yeah.
And as far as the weight and ramifications of that, because according to this, as a story point, in order to keep them isolated from Jason, it wasn't enough that they flew by their safe port. They inadvertently destroyed that space station and presumably the hundreds of thousands of people that lived on board.
Yeah.
And it's just like a note. It's a passing note. It's a beat in the storyline that we're asked to take seriously in spite of everything else being really goofy and hamming.
Yeah.
And like the lines that you want to say because they're zingers, but they just wouldn't say that.
Yeah.
When the military guy's checking in on his bloke and he's been thrown on a giant screw,
he's
going to say that his buddy's dead.
Yeah.
No, he's not going to say that. He's going to say he's
screwed. Yeah.
Right? And it's almost like Airplane. Go for the most obvious joke and ring it as loudly as possible.
Some of it works, some of it doesn't.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's pretty mood specific, but it ain't boring.
No, and it's charming and fun, and it's quite a violent, Jason Voorhees film.
It's co-written by this dude Todd Farmer.
Yes, he's actually in the film as well.
He's in the movie. He gets his face bashed in, and I don't know. He wants to be Carpenter or Rodriguez or something like that.
Yeah.
He sort of wants to live in that same sort of scuzzy B-movie feel, but there's something not fun about a lot of his work, with the exception of this one. What
else is Todd Farmer?
He did the remake of the My Bloody Valentine.
Okay.
And he did that Nicolas Cage movie where he's driving the car. He's away from hell and being chased by...
Drive Angry,
yes. Things like this. And
you're thinking of Patrick Lussier.
Well, he directed them. I'm talking about the screenwriter, Farmer. Anyway, we see him again and again, and he does these sort of sleazy movies. Yeah. This is one of his first Hollywood movies.
Yeah.
Quote-unquote success. I mean, it's Friday the 13th 10, but if you're getting paid to write the screenplay of Friday the 13th 10, winning, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
and I really like to see him hit one out of the park. He hasn't really yet. I think it might be a left-handed compliment to say that Jason X is his best work.
Yeah.
But hey, there's still time. We'll see where he goes from there.
Yeah.
It's bizarre and crazy, and we talked about like the Jason Goes to Hell sort of being the odd child out,
Yeah.
I think this is like the class clown. This is the one that's dumb as a bag of hammers and knows it.
Yes,
and it's not dumb.
It accepts what it is.
It's not dumb in the way that Part 6 was, while it's still existing as a Friday the 13th movie.
Yeah.
This is almost spreading it to a much wider net. Jason becomes Uber Jason. Nanotechnology.
And he doesn't really die in this movie as well. We last see him falling to Earth too, and it's heavily suggested that he will continue what he does best.
We have no reason to believe that Jason will ever die.
Yeah.
He just landed on another planet and is going to take up shop there. So,
yeah.
Jason lives on. And we can go on forward in the series knowing that no matter what, if this is canon, Jason will live to kill on future planets.
Yes.
And I don't know about you, but I take comfort in that.
I do.
Well, how about some notable kills?
Well, to me, the holodeck sequence is, like I said, the best kill. The obviously the use of not nitroglycerin, whatever she gets frozen in.
Yeah, this woman's face gets dipped in this freezing liquid.
Yeah.
Freezes her face solid, and then he shatters her on the counter. My personal favorite. Really great line. We don't actually see the death, but the asshole teacher who's the Cooper of the group, always saying and doing the wrong thing and sleeping with his students.
Yeah.
Has that great line. It's okay, you guys. He just wants his machete back.
Yeah.
Yeah. Give him his machete, you asshole.
Yeah, no. The red shirts are a lot of fun in this movie. That's one thing that it works. Glad that did. Like, even though they are essentially cookie cutter, they're not deep characters. The cliches somehow are amusing and work in this film.
It's a weird line because I love and hate it simultaneously.
See, I don't have hate.
Well, I mean, overall, my review is, I guess, kind of guilty positive.
Yes.
But just as an example, the hull is breached and a character's about to be sucked through a hole in the wall.
Right.
And she delivers the line, "This sucks in so many ways," before she goes out the door. It's like, I love it. I hate it. It's Jason X.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, that scene sort of sums up the movie. It's so ridiculous. You giggle, and then I kind of go,
I'm not proud of myself for liking
I am.
Jason X.
I mean, it's a bad
I'm not gonna
movie.
Say it's horrible. I mean, in the canon of Friday the 13th movies, this is pretty watchable.
It's probably one of the most Friday the 13th movies I've rewatched. I think I've seen it 5 or 6 times now.
And it's different, but Jason is still Jason. I don't think Jason doesn't do anything that I really called hard bullshit on.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I mean, I love the fact that he essentially falls like a comet into another planet. Yeah. That's rather sweet and
Points
charming.
for originality, and it was the best Jason in space movie it could be.
It also has one of the best supporting characters as that leader of the platoon. I forget what the actor's name is, but Sergeant something such or whatever.
The guy who takes several machete stabs and just puts some fucking duct tape on it and
goes back to work.
Round.
Yeah. And really, I mean, does he die in this movie as well? I guess he's sort of...
I think he would have burned up in the atmosphere.
Yeah.
But now that Jason's made of metal and has the nanotechnology, I think we can believe Jason will live to hack another day.
Warn your friends. Warn everyone.
Welcome to my nightmare.
We're not safe awake or asleep.
Okay. At long last, after 10 years, maybe more of pre-production, almost 30 years combined between the two series, Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street, the code was finally cracked. They came out with a screenplay, and they landed on for a director of all people. And I swear to God, they blindfolded someone and threw a dart, but they landed on Ronnie Yu. And I'm happy that they did. Even though Ronnie Yu, to his own admission, had never seen a Friday the 13th movie.
I think that's what they liked about him.
And the fact that his background was largely in sort of violent martial art spectacle type of movies.
Yep.
Most famously, The Bride with the White Hair.
Yes, but at this point he had done Bride of Chucky.
Bride of Chucky, which was a fairly successful...
which got him this gig, essentially.
He sort of did a good full of life entry into Child's Play. No reason to think he couldn't do the same for Friday the 13th. Yep. But at this point, Nightmare on Elm Street, or this Freddy vs. Jason movie was a big deal.
Yeah.
A lot of money is tied up in this.
Yeah.
And a lot of... They've
I'm
already...
surprised it took that long to get made, though. Like, it was in New Line's hands for well over 10 years.
Yeah. Just to get it to where they needed it to be and to make it a workable scenario and probably work out the behind-the-scenes dealings of who's getting what percentage of what, you know. Here they come. A lot of those decisions seemed like out of pocket to be bad. And most controversially, we lose our Jason Voorhees. Kane Hodder is no longer going to be playing Jason as he has since part 7 now.
Yeah.
So that was big news. The choice seemed almost purely aesthetic.
Yeah.
Probably at this point they'd have to pay Kane a good amount of money since he's returning this much time. But I honestly think they just wanted the image of sort of the small, wiry, spindly Freddy Krueger against the big fucking lug football player looking, Jason Voorhees, just to get that image, make it as solid as possible.
Yeah.
I've already gone on record for Rank and Review just saying that I'm a huge Freddy vs. Jason fan.
It works, and it works so well.
So I'm going to put the ball largely in your court here.
Yeah.
I think it's a modern horror fantasy classic in a way. I mean, maybe put quotes around classic, but people will be pondering this movie for many decades to come. It will be a curio. And the fact that it was a bona fide box office blockbuster.
It was number 1 for 3 weeks in a row. Like, it just kept going. There was talk for the longest of times to, make a sequel and make other crossovers. Like, there is a script in Hollywood somewhere of Ash versus Michael Myers versus Freddy and Jason.
And there's all sorts of comic book permutations, but who knows what, if anything, will come of that. It's weird because then you're getting into a series of several different unspeaking killers fighting each other, which gets tricky story-wise. But anyway, Freddy vs. Jason. Cole's notes of the plot. Freddy has been forgotten. He needs to be remembered. He's in hell.
Which is a cool idea, actually.
He reaches out to Jason in his dreams, awakens him from his slumber because Jason can never die, tells him through the visage of Jason's mother that he must go to Elm Street and kill the naughty teenagers there. Thus creating fear in Elm Street, thus bringing back thoughts of Freddy, thus bringing more power to Freddy so he can do his business again. Problem is, by the time Freddy's getting powerful enough to do his killing, Jason's done most of the work for him. This causes conflict, and since there's nobody to mediate, they just have to work it out physically, know, because that's just how they do business. It's interesting to me that they're both terrible, and they both have a steep body count to their backs, but very quickly, because I prefer the franchise Friday the 13th to Nightmare on Elm Street, I came in a Jason fan. But Freddy does establish himself as the villain of this piece in a lot of ways.
He's definitely the puppet master to Jason's sort of puppet. You're meant to really not like Freddy Krueger. He is the villain of the piece in a lot of ways.
And that's always been the way. Jason's very businesslike and like a blunt instrument. Like I said, like if you go where you're not supposed to be, he will kill you. That's it. That's how he does his business. Freddy will kill, as many people as he can, and not only will he kill them, he will make fun of them as he kills them, and he seems to enjoy the torture of it. So I like him less. I guess it's hard to say I like either of them, but I like Freddy less.
Well,
production values and acting across the board, very strong.
Yes. And, I have to say, the fights between the actual, when they do finally happen, the two, legends, if you will, is sort of like a giant cartoon. And I think that works within that universe to make it sort of, a ha-ha slapstick. The violence isn't... It's definitely different, from the film that comes after it.
I do think that in that respect, in the fight, the fact that he comes through the sort of martial arts background and the wire work really actually added another dimension. Because in another person's hands, I think the fight would be a little bit more sluggish, or slower, or more brutal. It would be a slower fight, but the wounds will be more substantial, as it were. There's a cartoon quality, a goofy quality to it. But it does all of this goofiness while respecting both franchises.
Yes.
And that's in the screenplay as well. But I also got to give Ronnie Yu a lot of points for that, because I think he said he was familiar with Nightmare on Elm Street, but less so with Friday the 13th.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of elements to juggle, and the story is somewhat convoluted.
Yes. You touched upon this earlier when we've talked about this movie, that you do call bullshit on one thing, and that's when Jason would walk into the house just to kill one person, that the boyfriend of the one girl.
The first big kill of the movie.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a great kill, but Jason does walk into a house full of kids, kill one person and leave. Kind of got to call shenanigans on that, but that's the only real loud one.
Yeah.
A lot of the fanboy stuff will debate, who really won the fight. And at the end of the day, spoilers, kids, we see Jason emerging from the lake holding Freddy's severed head.
Yes.
But Freddy's head winks at us.
Yes.
What does it mean?
It means that he never dies. This will go on and on and on and on.
But to my mind, I think, the fact that Jason's carrying Freddy's head suggests that Jason was victorious in that battle. And if you go by kill count, I think Freddy only actually kills one. Am I wrong? He kills Jason Ritter's best friend, the Canadian actor whose name I always forget. He
kills that stoner.
He possesses the stoner, but Jason hawks him in half. You could be argued that Freddy does more physical damage to Jason and even more psychological damage to Jason, and that he makes Jason relive the drowning.
I guess that Freddy only really killed that best friend.
Yeah.
Brother.
Jason does the bulk of the killing in the movie, and I think in a way that's
he
smart.
does kill the best friend. Yeah.
In a way, it's smart that he does that, because Jason doesn't have a voice.
Yeah.
Jason just gets to do what Jason does.
Yeah.
The only voice we get is Freddy, and he can do things like turn into the caterpillar from Alice in Wonderland and possess the fucking stoner who's clearly trying to be Jay from Jay and Silent Bob.
Yeah.
And if you make it your life's mission to emulate performance-wise Jason Mewes, you failed as a human being. I don't care if they said a Jason Mewes type in the script. It was just a derivative lazy performance in a movie that didn't have a lot of derivative lazy performances.
No.
It was a character that I liked to see die, and not just because, it was one of those distracting characters. It was just like, ugh. He does arguably have the funniest line, though, of the movie.
Which is?
Dude, that goalie was pissed about something. That goalie was pissed about something.
Yes, it does boast, a rather epic, killing sequence, which, I basically tears of joy and a little bit of giggle went out, kind of happened when I saw it. What would you call it? The raver scene? The rave party.
In the middle of a cornfield. Well, in the middle of a farm.
Some of the best Jason minutes ever put to celluloid.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
He's completely engulfed in flame. He carves a path through the cornfield and hacks his way through this rave.
Yes.
We've talked before about Jason being an asexual creature.
Yeah.
In the novelization of Freddy vs. Jason, which I would love to read if it existed, Jason realized for the first time in his life that he had an erection while killing all of those kids in the rave. Didn't even understand why. It's just it seemed like his entire existence was leading up to this moment of killing these obnoxious kids. One of the first kids he kills at the rave, too, is date raping Ginger from Ginger Snaps.
Right. Yes, Catherine
Isabel shows up here.
Yeah. Yes, and has, a rather sizable role. Good for her.
Yep. A lot of Canadian talent shows up in here. Yeah. Chris Marquette plays a supporting role in here.
And Jason Ritter's son?
Yeah. John Ritter's son.
John Ritter's son. Yeah, Jason Ritter is in this movie.
And what's the name of the from Destiny's Child?
Kelly Rowland.
Kelly Rowland
has
a part in here, and a memorable dream sequence in which she dreams that her nose is cut off.
Who's the sort of nerdy friend that?
I was trying to remember the name of that actor. He's also in 2 of the Ginger Snaps movies. He's a really good Canadian actor. Here, I'll splice his name in. The actor whose name we're trying to remember there is Brendan Fletcher, and it pains me that I couldn't remember his name because he's a working Canadian actor. He's been working in TV and film in Canada since the mid-90s, and he's really good. So I'm glad that he had even a passing role in the immortal classic that is Freddy vs. Jason. You can also see him in 2 of the 3 Ginger Snaps movies, and like I say, almost every Canadian TV show ever made. He's been in a lot of stuff. He's a good actor, and he's somehow managing to stay afloat while still remaining in Canada mostly, it seems. Yeah. So good for him. Yeah, there's just not a lot of bad things for me to say about Freddy vs. Jason. No. It's definitely an acquired taste, but I think if you're going to pay your ticket to see Freddy vs. Jason, you come in knowing, where you stand, right?
This is definitely a huge step up in the whole, echelon or group of both Nightmare on Elm Street and Friday the 13th. It's a solid action comedy horror.
It seemed destined to fail too. It seemed like there was just no way they were going to satisfy the fan base. Yeah. Especially because there was something of a divide between Freddy and Jason. Yeah. It's interesting in that I think Nightmare on Elm Street is arguably the more, quote, imaginative of the series. Yes. But in a way, I think time is going to be kinder to the Friday the 13th franchise than it is to the Nightmare on Elm Street ones in some ways. Yes. So it'll be interesting to see. I became a Ronnie Yu fan because of this movie. I'm still trying to get my hands on some of his earlier work. Yeah. I got into the Child's Play movies backwards through him because of this. It's just how lucky it was that they managed to land on Ronnie Yu, because
he also did that Fearless movie with Jet Li, which is quite good actually.
Solid, absolutely. Yeah. There's a little bit of magic to this movie. I don't know, it seems a little bit hyperbolic to say it, but because it, like I say, it just didn't seem like it was possible that they were going to satiate all of the fans and have us coming so proudly and happily, from it. And the movie's over 10 years old now. Yeah. I shudder to say. Yeah. So they haven't even fucked it up with a lame sequel yet.
Yeah. Well, it seems like it almost won't happen now.
Yeah, if it was going to happen, you'd think it would have. And if it does happen, I doubt it'll happen with Robert Englund. Yeah. But it was a weird alignment to where all the stars aligned to please the geeks, and the geeks were pleased.
Did you know a young boy drowned here? He was my son. And today is his birthday.
Yeah, baby. You won't believe my parents' cabin. Here we are. Pretty nice, huh? All right, you ready?
Let's do it!
Yeah!
Hey, I'm not from around here, but I'm looking for my sister. She's gone missing. Have you seen her?
She ain't missing. She's dead. People go missing around here, they're gone for good.
Marcus Nispel.
You.
He seems delegated to doing specifically remakes for some reason.
And apparently he's quite crazy as well.
Yeah, he can be difficult, but he's done the Conan remake, the Texas Chainsaw remake, and this. And
he also did Pathfinder.
Yeah, but that was the one thing that I think was actually an original property-ish. Yeah. Anyway, he has a great visual aesthetic.
He does.
As far as making sort of grimy, realistic, dripping, greasy, seedy-looking movies. Yeah. Very similar in style in a lot of ways to Rob Zombie. Yeah. Only a little bit less redneck-focused.
Yes. Yeah.
He had great success with the remake of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and I actually, because I don't consider TCM to be such a sacred cow, think that his remake is pretty decent. I mean, if you're into the torture porn, it's a very specific sort of thing.
There's something about it, I will give it that.
And I guess I understand them approaching him for the Friday the 13th reboot.
Yeah.
if you got to do a reboot and you're looking at a list of names, I guess.
And Michael Bay produced.
Yes, well...
You knew this movie was going to be sort of loud and bang. And
arguably, Michael Bay's name is not a stamp of quality, but it's unless he's in the directing or writing chair, I don't necessarily say it guarantees shittiness either.
Yeah.
What they've done here is they've reinvented Jason slightly. They knew that they couldn't start over and start with Mrs. Voorhees and, a slasher whodunit. That's not going to happen. We need Jason for this movie to be good.
Yeah.
I feel like what they've done here is made a highlight reel of the first 3 movies.
Yes, it is definitely sort of a highlight reel in that fashion.
And they have pushed the death and the gore and the sex especially as far as they possibly can. And giving us exactly what we want, 13 grisly kills, and from the same writing team that brought us Freddy vs. Jason. And they felt, in their mind, the interpretation of Freddy vs. Jason was a little softer than they wanted. They thought that movie should have been harder. Yeah. And they might have even overcompensated on this draft of Friday the 13th, making it the most vicious, ugly, dark Friday the 13th chapter of the franchise. Yeah. But like I was saying, in giving us everything that we would expect we want, I still have issues with this movie. There's a lot good, especially the first 20 minutes.
This movie starts off so well and is probably, the best sequence in all of the Friday the 13th movies. If it could maintain that energy that the first 20 minutes had, this movie would have been probably the best Friday the 13th movie. That sequence with the sleeping bag and the fact that Jason sets up the trap, and
it's a fairly prolonged sequence, and we see 5 kids make their way to Camp Crystal Lake, a very obvious exposition.
And they are killed
brutally.
Yes, you are affected by it.
Yeah.
And I thought, wow, it's been a while since I felt that sort of sense of danger and fear, really.
We're given the Coles know history of the lake. They know they're going to a bad place. Jason shows up. In this new permutation, Jason is a person. He is alive.
Yes.
And the way he gets around, instead of sort of weirdly being able to teleport or always magically being in the right place at the right time, there's this weird system of tunnels that he has in which to get around.
Yeah.
All of this is really, really, really well handled in the prologue sequence. The pre-credit sequence, which is almost the first third of the movie, really, is, like you said, of the greatest quality of probably anything in the series.
Yes.
The problem is that once the movie starts, nothing tops it. Yeah. I can compare it to another remake, actually. I remember seeing in the theater the remake of Dawn of the Dead.
Yes.
And the sequence that happens before the credit sequence in that movie just knocked my socks off. And I remember thinking to myself, if the rest of this movie is as good as this pre-credit sequence, they will have surpassed the original.
Yeah.
Same case could be said here. In both cases, I think it didn't surpass the original.
Yeah.
But I will say that I much prefer the remake of Dawn of the Dead to the remake of Friday the 13th.
Yeah. No, it starts off so well, and you kind of go, wow. It almost brings tears of joy, and then it spends far too much with one half of the TV show Supernatural. What's his name? Pretty Boy, Jared Padalecki, I think his name is.
Yeah.
There's too much with that, and the red shirts, especially that sort of really annoying.
A group of kids come to a cabin where
the one who owns the house. His daddy owns the house. The rich boy.
Rich assholes. Parents own the place.
Yeah.
He doesn't seem to like any of his friends.
Yeah.
He doesn't seem to like anybody. He doesn't seem to like himself.
Yeah.
He's one of these such an asshole characters that you don't really believe that he exists.
Yeah.
And you especially don't believe that he would, get laid. He spends the last half of this movie in a ridiculous sex scene.
Yeah.
And I'm not anti-sex scenes, by the way, but I think I said it when we first reviewed this movie.
Yeah.
This movie put me in the uncomfortable position of agreeing with Michael Bay. Because Michael Bay famously walked out of the screening of this movie saying it's more about sex than about violence.
Yes.
And I think he might be onto something there.
Yeah.
I mean, I respect them being honest as far as these movies are about sex and violence, and I'm sure all the actresses who auditioned for parts in the movie. No bones were made about this. We expect you to show your gear, because that's what the ritual of these movies are.
Yeah.
And they seem to do it with such relish that you got the feeling that they're in on the joke and okay with it.
Yeah.
I didn't get the feeling like I have in some performances where they were uncomfortable, visibly uncomfortable doing the skinny dipping scene. But I think it tips the scale to the far end. It goes to the sort of like Piranha 3D remake where it just starts to feel sleazy. I feel like this is less fun and more sleazy.
Yeah.
And that's definitely true of the sex, and it starts to be a little bit true for me of the violence. Because traditionally my Jason Voorhees kills or stuff that I like, he's sort of quick and brutal,
Yeah.
And we get a couple of quick and brutal deaths, but for the most part, we get a lot of prolonged, ugly, brutal deaths, A screwdriver driven slowly underneath your chin, stabbed in the back and left to sort of quiver, and it's approached in a more torture porny base than we're used to seeing in Friday the 13th. He's not necessarily lingering and enjoying the kill. It's not about torment, but it's different. The kills feel more horrifying and real and less fun as a consequence. Yeah. Now, it's a good choice perhaps to go more horrifying and real. It works more as a horror movie. But for me, the Friday the 13th series does have something fun about it. Yeah. And I think that is the essential missing ingredient to this remake. It's not fun. It's unpleasant.
It's tense. I mean, that's the one thing. I mean, it doesn't maintain the intensity, like as we mentioned earlier, of the first 50 minutes. But it's a full-blown thriller. There's no comedy in it. And I guess from that point, that's one of the things I like about it, is they went for a go for broke. They wanted to make Jason really threatening again. And I think that was a good idea. I like the things that they added to Jason as well. This was a Jason that, he sprinted.
Yeah.
I thought that was great. And, they sort of explained, then they sort of bought into the joke that how can Jason, you've got a scantily clad woman who's clearly faster than Jason. How can Jason continuously catch up? Oh, he's got tunnels. Good for him.
And booby traps.
Yeah.
And he's a lot smarter.
Yes, and I thought that
hunter than
and I thought that was a good idea. Mm-hmm. I sort of giggled that Jason was a pot farmer.
Yeah. Well, again, I think we talked about this before. I disagree with you. I don't think he was a pot farmer. I think somebody was a pot farmer, and that somebody's likely dead. But I don't imagine that Jason makes his living selling weed or smoking weed.
No, but he's protecting it in a lot of ways.
No, that guy found just like the kids did, found the pot farm. Yeah. But people had been stealing gas. They mentioned a note that someone had been stealing gas from the owner. Yeah. And presumably Jason was there to steal gas for the generator for his mines. Yeah. And that's when they encountered each other. I really don't think he was a pot farmer. I disagree with you on that plot point. Really? And especially since the movie's taking itself so seriously, to have that as a beat seems ridiculous to me. The big bullshit thing, if you want to debate whether or not he's a pot farmer, we can. Yeah. But I don't think you can debate to me that the Jason we know and love does not take
a hostage. I don't buy the fact that, she's wearing, was it Jason Miller's sweater at some point?
Whitney is the name of the character. Jared Padalecki is her brother who's trying to find her. She was with the first group. Yeah. She wasn't killed because she was wearing the sweater or the amulet or whatever. Jason didn't kill her, but he kept her chained to the wall, and he would have had to feed her, and weeks have gone by, so she's been down there for God knows how long.
So Jason has fed her, essentially.
He must have. There must have been some kind of basic interaction between the two of them. That is such a break in it that I'm sort of surprised that the screenplay writers, allowed it. Yeah. Other things that I really do appreciate that they added to it. I think that what they were going for with the asshole character was to make him so unlikable that we wanted that death to come.
Of course.
And when that death comes, they really relish it. They really let us bathe in it. And he has a long, prolonged, horrible...
How does he die again?
He gets stabbed through with the machete. The machete is raked up through his ribcage. Then he gets spiked through the back of a truck, which drives away. Yeah. While he's sort of impaled on the back, bleeding out, dying. Yay! Cooper character finally dies. But The drawback is that our least favorite character lasts longer than almost anybody else in the movie.
Yes.
But I really like and respect the choice. I got to admit, I did kind of see it coming, but it still made me smile. The character who is completely altruistic throughout the movie, she does everything right. She helps the Jared Padalecki character to find his sister. Yeah. She's a virginal character. She says no to all sexual advances. Yeah. She doesn't swear. She doesn't drink. Yeah. And she gets a machete through the fucking heart in the mines and is just dead and out of the way, you know? Yeah. Ostensibly, she is set up to be our survivor girl. Yeah. But, again, the second I saw that Whitney was alive... Yeah. There's no way, in my mind, that Whitney would have survived this much of an ordeal and not lived through the movie at this point. Yeah. That's just a decision that I made the second they made that reveal, and it proved to be the truth. Yeah. I don't know. There's a lot good here. Like, the production value is good. And I sort of complained about the kills, but the kills are effective in making you cringe and go, ouch. I find that the sex scenes are uncomfortable and distracting.
The sex scene, well, especially that one, is way too long. You could have easily trimmed half to 3/4 of it.
It's pretty extreme at the beginning of the movie too, but I kind of also liked it then because it sort of felt like it was acknowledging the pedigree that came before it. Yes, we're having a pretty raunchy sex scene here, but isn't that what Friday the 13th does?
For, yeah.
But we had that scene. Yeah. And so to have another one later and another one that's way longer and like way more graphic and like Red Shoe Diaries softcore pornography time. Yes. And I don't know, like, I'm pro naked female anatomy, you know, and that makes me uncomfortable. Watching it alone makes me uncomfortable. There's just something, it's like, I feel sleazy for having watched it.
It's so over the top. It is so over the top. It's definitely, you know, a cinematic sex scene and not real sex.
So that's the sort of the example. It's like they're trying so hard to give you everything you want and loads of it. Yeah. But it, for me, just not quite 100% there.
Yeah. No, I think I like this movie a lot more than you did. I said, I love the little nice touches that they add to it to make Jason far more lethal. Are there some things that, you know, are bad choices? I agree with you that the Jason we know and love would not take hostages. The fact that she's alive, I think, is bullshit.
But sometimes you gotta roll with the punch.
Yeah. But Jason is threatening again, and I thought you couldn't do that anymore. Like, this is what, number 11?
12.
You know, like, he's not that. You know, how do you make something that there's been 12 movies before? Or, you know, 11 movies before, and make him at least somewhat scary again. To me, that's no small feat.
You know what else is no small feat, brother?
What's that?
We have now reviewed all of the Friday the 13th movies.
Wow, again. I feel exhausted.
We did it, brother.
We did it.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
We need to rank these from your least favorite to your favorite.
The least favorite to my favorite.
In typical rank and review fashion, I'm going to let my guest go first. But because there is 12 of these, the chances of us matching are probably pretty good.
I actually expect some intense debate.
Okay.
But here we go. All right, we're going from least to our favorite. Is that?
That's typically how I go.
Okay. Well, since there are 12 Friday the 13th films, including Freddy vs. Jason, I'm going to start at number 12. My least favorite is A New Beginning. This was hard. This was debated. I think this is the biggest, pardon my French, fuck you to the franchise. The only redeeming quality of this film is there are a lot of deaths. Mm-hmm. And deaths handled brutally, but besides that, the story it's grating. The acting is over the top annoying. It's not even really Jason, just a spit in his face. I think they botched the Tommy Jarvis story. The sex is, you know, we talked about earlier how the reboot is so dirty and nasty and dark. You actually feel scummy watching this A New Beginning. So I'm going to start with number 12, A New Beginning, as the worst. The one that I expect you to kind of raise your eyebrow like, what? Number 11 is The New Blood. Number 7.
Yeah, you're crazy.
Yeah.
Continue.
Sorry. This film is so neutered. I mean, one of the reasons you go to watch a Friday the 13th is to see Jason do his over-the-top kills. And I know it's not its fault. I know it had to deal with a very angry conservative MPAA.
Yeah.
But, god damn. It's like you drop your shorts to jerk off, and then
everything's been blurred.
Yeah. It's not even like watching Japanese porn where they dirty out the naughty bits.
As many porn analogies as we can make.
Yeah, well, hey, I mean, we are reviewing Friday the 13th. Let's be as chauvinist as we can. I don't know, the whole Carrie storyline didn't thrill me as much. I found her actually kind of personally grating as well. The only redeeming factor is they have a pretty awesome Jason in this who takes a thumping. But besides that, and it's short. It is a short movie. I could not wait for this one to be over. Followed at number 10, Jason Takes Manhattan. Once again, a film that really, it's honestly could be a PG-13 Friday the 13th in this day and age.
It's even more neutered than 7, which is why I think it is worse.
I think the idea of taking Jason to Manhattan tickled me a little bit. Once again, it is a gigantic cock tease. It's poorly named. It should be Jason on a boat, because really that's what that is. And there are a lot of stupid things in this movie, but there are a lot of stupid things in number 7. That house explosion. Yeah. I mean, the making of it's pretty humorous about, like, kind of, I think we went a little overboard. But yeah, I don't know. The only reason why it ranks higher than 7 is it took Jason to Manhattan. We saw that for a little bit. I smiled. I'm not watching the clock as much with Manhattan, but hey. Number 9, and shame, and I forget the name of the director. He did 2 of them. Steve Miner. Shame on Steve Miner. You're bringing a sequel to a surprise, highly profitable hit in Friday the 13th, and you come up with number 2. It makes me wonder if, you were under the gun and like a lot of the Friday the 13th movies, you were promised one budget and then it was ceremoniously taken away.
Yeah.
But the level of stupidity in that movie, once again, it's headbangingly cringeworthy, especially how they handle that ending.
Yeah.
I don't mind the Jason in the baghead so much, but it's hard for me to buy that Jason gets in a cab, leaves Crystal Lake, goes to the big city, buys a new pair of clothes and shoes, and then goes and kills our survivor girl.
Yeah. And like you said, the film doesn't seem like it ends. It seems like it runs out of film. Like they run out of time.
So I will have to go at number 9 is part 2. Number 8, Jason Goes to Hell. It's better production value. The kills are brought back to a wonderful level, but I can't believe the filmmakers forgot one of the cardinal rules, and they should know better at this point in time, is that your main character is going to be Jason Voorhees. Do not hold back on him. You show him in the beginning and you show him at the climax, but you've got 80 minutes where Jason is a fucking slug demon that can transfer like a body snatcher. No. From that conceit alone, you almost wish you were in the pre-production meetings and say, look, you've got a lot of good things here. This is going to seriously hurt your film. I know and I know it was the director's idea. He pitched that idea that we hold back on Jason, people will be very excited for him. No, you're just going to alienate your fan base and audience. So no, Jason Goes to Hell. Number 7, Jason X. There's no reason this film should be as high as it is. I can't. And this is probably the one film I will get the most tongue lashing from you fun, and that's fine. I don't mind getting feel dirty in all the right little places. But the red shirts do it for me for this film. I've mentioned it more than once that one of the ingredients that I think separates the good Jasons from the bad Jasons are the red shirts. They're utterly funny in this movie. They're charming, it's stupid, it's got really over-the-top bad CGI. I know this. I think an extra shout out goes out to killing David Cronenberg, and I like David Cronenberg, but they kill him and kill him well.
Yeah.
This movie is silly. I think it also boasts one of the best secondary characters and true adversaries for Jason in that Colonel character, who, I mean, I guess he doesn't kill Jason per se. Jason does survive, but he does send him to another planet. I don't know. It's strange. I've seen Jason 10 a lot more than a lot of these other films repeatedly. I keep on coming back to it.
Yeah.
It makes me smile. At number 6, I have Friday the 13th Part 3 in 3D. Once again, the secondary characters aren't as grating per se. I think you have to watch it in the old 3D, I think. That, to me, helps a lot.
Agreed.
If you watch it in regular format, this film would obviously tumble quite a bit. The obviously handheld 3D shots don't annoy me as much. I guess it's that whole suspension of disbelief that I'm willing to go for. It does boast the head squishing scene, which is one of the top kills in the film franchise. And I mean, at this point, he also gets his mask. Too many good things. I understand the complaints, but too many good things. Number 5, and this is how you end a series. Friday the 13th Part 4, Final Chapter. It brought a lot of deaths. It brought the tete. Jason's death it's one for the ages. It's pretty brutal. It brought Tom Savini back to the fold. It's short. It's sweet. I was not looking at the clock. Attaboy, Final Chapter. Too bad it was such a lie. This is where I think we'll get a little hissy.
Okay.
Number 4, the original Friday the 13th. At this point, you've got 3 films above the original. And this was hard for me because this is the granddaddy. This is one that has Pamela Voorhees. It is Pamela?
Yep.
This has Kevin Bacon. The deaths are they still hold up quite well. It's shocking violence. This is one that started it all. I think they've gotten it even better in a couple more tries in this series. It's the original. It's the granddaddy. You need to see it at some point. If anything, if on those 500 movies you see before you die, if anyone, I guess you should watch this one because it started it all. Number 3, the reboot. Too many good things are done well in this movie. I get the whole criticism that it's dark and nasty. It turns you off. I think this movie affected you more than you're willing to admit. There's something to be said that they came so close from making the best Friday the 13th series. I agree there are flaws. I do call bullshit on Jason taking hostages. I think that's just does not work. I can buy the fact that he's a smarter Jason in this one. He's very real. He's very much a real threat. That opening 20 minutes is, I think, the best in the series. It really, really is. They do everything well, and that's how you start that movie. The sex scene is too much. It really, really is. It is unbelievably
There's a couple of sex scenes, and there's lots of nudity throughout the movie. Again, I don't want to sound like I'm against sex scenes or nudity.
No, but
it's just that scene was goddamn ridiculous.
Yes, as we mentioned earlier, if Michael Bay is telling you to cut that scene,
if Michael Bay is saying too much, you better listen because he has no idea of too much.
There's too many good things with this movie that it surpasses the original. I do think the movie thinks it's smarter than it actually is. It is really just a greatest hits, but I was shocked to find Jason to be a very threatening and a very scary being. And after 12 movies, they pull it off. I do tip my hat. Number 2, Freddy vs. Jason. And the only reason why it is not number 1 is because in some ways it is not a true Friday the 13th movie. It has all of the elements there. I mean, it's got, red shirts that die and red shirts that we do care about. It has lots of over-the-top violence and gore. It does take partially at Camp Crystal Lake, so they do bring it back there. The main attraction of that movie, though, is Jason throwing down with Freddy.
Yeah,
that takes up a good portion, and it's not a complaint. Mm-hmm. I even say that Freddy vs. Jason is overall a better movie than the film that I do rank as number 1. But it's not a true Friday the 13th movie, and that's what made me bring it down to number 2. I agree it's probably the most polished out of all of them, with maybe their reboot coming close. It's a lot of fun. I've seen it the most out of all of these movies, but it's not a true Friday the 13th movie, and we're going for best Friday the 13th movie, which makes me still a little surprised that it's number 1. I knew it was going to rank high, but I went and thought, did it come to number 6 where they finally got it that right? And I think at number 6, Jason Lives accompanies or embodies, everything that's right about a Friday the 13th movie. It's not too serious. It's a lot of fun. The humor comes up in the right places. I mean, I still giggle at that camp girl reading No Exit by Sarge. That was a definitely wink, wink, nudge, nudge. This is pre-Scream, so it's got that whole meta.
Well, we weren't laughing at the death. We were laughing at sort of the lines.
Yeah.
When the caretaker looks into the camera and says, "Some people got a strange idea of entertainment." He was talking to us, and we acknowledged that by laughing.
Yeah.
It is sort of a precursor to Scream, and it does do the balance of funny and Friday pretty well.
Yeah.
Some people would argue that Part 6 is a little bit too silly to rank that high on the list.
Yeah.
But I'm a big fan, so you're not going to hear me bitch.
Yeah. It's, like I said, it got all of the ingredients right. Yeah, and I think they also handled Tommy Jarvis the best way they could. They made him, once again, sort of a protagonist.
Yeah.
After the debacle of number 5, where he's sort of the killer, they just went, screw it. It's Jason. Jason's the killer. We'll have Tommy as our sort of arch rival. Let's go for it. So there we go. That's the order.
That's the order.
Yes.
But this is comfort food for me.
Yeah.
This is especially for some reason if I'm like sick and stuffed up at home and just spending the day on the couch. These are the kind of movies that I will put in that are sort of uncomplicated, easy to follow, that I can drift in and out of, and it's weirdly,
you can leave the room and come back.
It's weirdly comforting to hear Jason stalking all these campers. But they are good, they are bad, and they are ugly. At number 12, I agree entirely. Part 5, The New Beginning. Yeah. It's kind of strange that it is actually the very bottom, in that there's a lot of kills, there's a lot of nudity, and even though Jason, according to Hoyle, Jason is not present in the movie, there's a lot of dude in a hockey mask dealing out death.
I know.
And they keep on throwing shit at you to try and keep you as entertained as possible, In a series full of pretty weak acting, there's some real standout bad acting in this.
Yeah.
And, again, this is where the MPAA was starting to take over a little bit, where the editing was really starting to hurt the payoffs, because when you climb suspense, and the payoff, the climactic release moment isn't there. I go back to your cock tease analogy.
Yes.
We're going to bring you to the line of pleasure, and then we are going to stop. And then we're going to bring you to the line of pleasure, and then we are going to stop.
Yeah.
And it's not fun. At number 11, Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan.
Yeah.
They utterly removed the balls out of Friday the 13th for this movie. And again, like we said in the review, if you're going to make that strong a concept, make sure you have the budget to execute it. Because if you don't, your movie has failed before anyone's watched it.
Yeah.
People went to that movie wanting to see Jason fuck up New York. They're going to be really, really disappointed.
Yeah.
And if they went there to see boobs and blood, they're going to be really, really disappointed.
Yeah.
And if they went there to be frightened or, exhilarated, they're going to be really disappointed. This is a movie that sold on its concept, and the movie didn't deliver that concept. Even if you argue that they did shoot for a couple of days in Times Square, and there is indeed some footage in New York, it's not what the movie's about. The movie's about Jason on a boat.
Yeah. And
it's not good.
Yeah.
Number 10, Jason Goes to Hell. Your complaint of one of the Jason movies, not really being a Jason movie, like Part 5, Jason isn't there, it's not really a Jason movie. Jason being a demonic slug creature that can be reborn into his original hockey-wearing, mask-wearing visage by crawling inside the corpse of his dead sister is pretty far afield of anything that we've seen. I appreciate like that they brought money and talent to the floor here. Like they definitely brought people who knew how to make good-looking film, and they brought the blood and gore back, which was nice to see. So the frustrating thing is, for all the things that New Line did right, they failed to make, to my mind, a Friday the 13th movie. In a lot of ways, this movie was just a staging ground for Freddy vs. Jason. Mm-hmm. And since Freddy vs. Jason was 10 years away, kind of unnecessary. So, not a huge fan of Jason Goes to Hell. Number 9 is going to be part 2. Friday the 13th part 2. I think the middle of the movie is a adequate Friday the 13th movie, in that here's your group of sheep, and here they are being knocked down one at a time.
Yeah.
But the beginning coda, where they kill off the original heroine from Friday the 13th, as we have talked about, doesn't really make a lot of sense, is anticlimactic, and it's just not satisfying. Yeah. And the end of the movie is, like, it really feels like they just ran out of money and time or film, because to have that sloppy an ending kind of sort of exposes the fact that this was clearly
cash grab.
It was cash grab. There was no art to that movie at all. Not that there has to be necessarily, but I mean, they were very early in the series.
Yeah.
Some of the stuff you can write off as saying they were just finding their feet. They wanted to know what a Friday the 13th movie was, and at part 2 they didn't really quite have the code cracked yet.
Yeah.
But if I'm picking a Friday the 13th off the shelf to watch, part 2 is not going to be high on my list. Yeah. At 8th position, controversially for Lee Beckman, is The New Blood.
See, this I don't understand.
Because it did get utterly destroyed by the ratings board, and most of the kills were edited or completely removed from the movie.
Yeah.
We have sort of that bullshit teaser Friday the 13th going on until the climactic battle between the psychic Tina and Jason Voorhees. Yeah. Like I say, Jason is given for the first time in the series a worthy adversary, and it goes on for quite a while. She, psychically wraps vines around his legs and drops electricity in the water, strangles him, throws him through a flight of stairs, drops a house on him. Yeah. It turns into an action movie, and arguably that's not very Friday the 13th, but
I will argue that some of them are very much action thrillers, but yes.
But in a way, it became the showdown between these two supernatural beings, less so than it is about the ritual of watching sex and violence. Mm-hmm. I think the new enough element of the story helped distract me from the MPAA doing everything it could to destroy this franchise. And my heart goes out to the director, because I really do feel like if we could see the director's cut of this movie, a lot of your sour opinion of this movie might be changed. I mean, it's still not going to be high art.
Yeah.
But...
Oh, I feel for the guy. I know exactly what happened to him, and I'm sure they went in with the best intentions, but the road to hell is paved with the best intentions.
Yeah, well, and it's on the bottom half of the list. It's just higher on the list than you wanted it to.
I just wonder, even if we saw his director's cut, if your opinion would have changed so much. There are little things I like about it. That one shot with the lightning where Jason's in the corner, that is a good shot. Yeah. That's a good idea. I wasn't as completely sold as Carrie versus Jason, but...
And again, they didn't have the means to make a slasher movie anymore. They couldn't make the Friday the 13th that they had been making for 6 movies, so they tried this. Is it as satisfying as a lot of them? Nope. Yeah. But it bothered me way less than Part 8, as far as, it feeling like Friday the 13th. At number 7 now, Friday the 13th Part 3. In 3D. My opinion of this is slightly raised when we last watched it, actually with the 3D goggles on, so that I can appreciate the gags.
Yeah.
If you watch Part 3 and you have a way to do it in 3D, that is definitely the way to do it. Otherwise, it is significant, as you say, mainly for the fact that Jason gets his hockey mask, and that's, an important part of the series.
Yeah.
And that's about it.
Yeah.
Jason gets his hockey mask. It's the most
Yeah.
significant event that takes place in that movie.
Yeah.
When you watch it just without the 3D, it's like 1 and 2, but somehow it feels slower to me.
Yeah.
You know. So there it is. At number 6, all the way at number 6, you will be proud for me to say, is Jason X, Jason
Wow.
in Space.
I am surprised.
He does make the halfway point of the series, and considering how kind of ridiculous and stupid that is,
I know.
I think that really says something. But it is ridiculous and stupid and fun.
Yes.
And that's what we're trying to have here while we watch these movies is fun. And I think like that's what sort of you saying I was soured by the remake. I mean I can acknowledge that it's well made and that like talent was into it, but I wasn't having fun for some reason. I don't know what it was. Jason in Space was completely stupid, but it knew it was completely stupid, and I had a smile on my face while I watched it.
There's no reason for that movie to be as good as it is, which is
Somehow.
strange praise.
Yeah.
It really is.
Number 5 is the remake.
Yeah.
That's where I put the
Wow.
remake at number 5.
Wow. See.
Again, that first 22 minutes, if that was like a short film or just an entry on itself,
Yeah.
number 1 with a bullet.
Yeah.
But basically, it seems like we have 2 Friday the 13th movies crammed here, and yeah, like I said, I just didn't enjoy the slow torture porny kills to it, and in an effort to make Jason real or more realistic, I guess,
Yeah.
they kind of. I think by making him not supernatural, had me spent a lot of the movie asking questions like, well, why is he doing this? If he's a real person and he's not so damaged as that he's able to live and survive, what is his motivation? Is it revenge? He's smart enough to live in this tunnel system and engage floodlights and set traps, but he'll kidnap somebody because they wear a pendant that reminds him of his mother and keep them strapped to a wall for 6 weeks. For what? Does he do a puppet show with her? Does he cuddle with her at night while he sleeps? Like, it was just a plot point and a pretty obviously dumb one. If you kidnap somebody, you're asking for a ransom, or you've got some sort of sinister sexual motivation, or I think Marcus Nispel is a talented director.
Yeah.
I'd kind of like to see him doing original work. It seems like anytime they're doing a high-profile remake, he gets the job for some reason. But he's a talented director. But I don't know. At 4th position is where I put the original Friday the 13th.
Okay.
It's kind of just an origin story. It sets the ball rolling for the rest of the series. But it's interesting when you look at it for the fact that as it was made, it was not to start off its franchise. It was just...
So you would put the original above the reboot?
I did. That's what I'm saying. I am saying the remake is at 5... the remake is at 5th place, and the original is at 4th place.
Okay.
Again, it's sort of classic template. At the time in 1980, the slasher movement was starting, but we hadn't seen the random group of little kids going out to an obscure location to be killed. There is no Jason until the end of the movie with the jump scare. But like I say, the movie wasn't. It hadn't become what it was going to be yet. This is a movie that sort of needed to be made so that we could get to where we were going. The kills are really good, and I think that it does have sort of a classic, charming feel to it. It's a significant movie culturally. It has echoes, and I like it well enough.
Yeah.
In 3rd position, Friday the 13th, Part 4, the final chapter.
Wow, that's higher up than I put it. Okay.
They were trying to end the series, and they were trying to end the series on a high point.
Yeah.
And if it had been the end of the series, if there were no more Friday the 13th after that, I would have said bravo. In fact, I would have said it was finished with the best installment of the franchise.
Yeah,
and
it does end well.
Almost never happens.
Yeah.
They brought Savini back. Amusing performance from Crispin Glover. It's right smack in the middle of the 80s era Paramount days of...
when they still cared about the project.
Yeah. And they'd found their footing now. Everybody involved knew what a Friday the 13th movie was by part 4. And everybody involved in that production did what they could to make the best damn Friday they could. And is the acting wonky? Is there creaks and moans to it? Yeah. But this is one of the ones that more often than not, if I'm going to watch a Friday, will come off the shelf before a lot of the other ones. So. Again, hilarious title.
Yeah.
The final chapter.
They lied.
And here's where it gets controversial. I'm going to put Friday the 13th Part 6 in second position.
Wow.
I have a lot of fun watching that movie.
Yeah.
I love the pace and energy to it.
Yeah.
I like that there's comedy to it, but we're not. The punchline isn't the deaths. We aren't laughing at that this person died or how. Well, as a rule, we're not laughing that this person died. We're laughing just at the lightness with which things are handled.
Yeah.
And like you say, the early stages that would get us towards Scream, where it acknowledges that this is the 6th chapter, and a lot has come before, and likely a lot will come after. So let's all just acknowledge that we're having fun with this, you know. Fairly great inventive kills, and for the most part...
the Winnebago sequence is pretty cool.
Yeah. For the most part, people that I really liked. I didn't necessarily understand Tommy's motivation a lot of the time.
Yeah.
But it's funny, in spite of the fact that he's utterly responsible for resurrecting Jason, basically all of the deaths after Part 6 in this series are directly Tommy Jarvis's fault.
Yeah.
Because not only does he bring Jason back to life, but he turns Jason into some sort of almost super villain.
He took tails and runs soon after being Dr. Frankenstein. Yeah. I get it.
So, I'm putting Freddy vs. Jason at number 1 because I think it's the best movie of these 12 movies.
It is.
I mean, I feel... I know what you're saying. I mean, is it a Friday the 13th movie? It's sort of a amalgam of them both, but I think that more so than a lot of the movies in the bottom half of this list, Jason performs like I would believe the Jason that I've come to know and love would behave. You know, they honored both franchises with this movie, and at no point I didn't call bullshit necessarily on Jason's fear of the water, especially in his dream state. I think way more works than doesn't. And for a movie this convoluted and this, with this much working against it plot-wise when you set out of the gate, I went into this movie, of course I'm going to watch Freddy vs. Jason, of course I am. But I had no real expectation of it being anything but stupid. Yeah. And I was surprised. Yeah. I was greatly surprised and happily surprised. Yeah. Easily. Out of all of these movies, Freddy vs. Jason is the one that I will revisit the most. Yeah. It's fast, it's pretty, it's stupid, it's got good actors, it's got good special effects, and it lives up to the promise of its title. Yeah. So, I mean, I really waffled on it, on how, can I put Freddy vs. Jason at number 1 if we're talking about Friday the 13th? But at the end, the list just looked wrong with it at number 2. So
it is the better overall movie. It is. Yeah. I will concede that.
We have 4 Jerrys to give out in this Uber edition of Rank and Review. You wanted to go discuss the best Jason, right?
Yes.
Kane Hodder played Jason in 7, 8, and 9. And I do think Kane Hodder is probably my favorite performer as Jason, but it's interesting because 7, 8, and 9 are, when we look at it, 3 of the worst chapters of Friday the 13th. Yeah. So I'm like, well, which one do I give it for? I mean, it will piss you off, but in a way, because we get more of his face, Casey spends the last sort of climactic few moments, 15 minutes or so of the movie without the mask on. Mm-hmm. In Part 7, The New Blood, because it's so stunt heavy, I think that is the one where Kane is most effectively used for his, a skill as a stuntman, and we're seeing Jason, taking a beating for a first time, and we're seeing Jason getting pissed off because of it, and I think that that's I honestly think the thing with Kane Hodder that made him really big with everyone is that moment when his mask is snapped off in 7, and he turns around and looks at her, and he just does, like, his whole body heaves, and he's like, "All right, bitch, it's on." That's when everybody sat back in their seat and said, "Jason's scary again." You know, even in this PG silly psychic movie, Jason just got scary. So, I mean, I'm tempted to give it to that. I also really like, just in generally speaking, the Jason that we see in Part 6.
Yeah.
He's played by 2 different actors, but he's got an efficiency and a brutality to him. Like, he almost seems like a child who doesn't know his own strength in the movie. Like, when he bends somebody in half or pulls off somebody's arm, he kind of looks at them and, like, goes, "Holy shit." It's great. And all of the actors who've ever played Jason have to do so mutely. So it's going to... I'll give the prize to Kane Hodder, I guess, for Part 7, but I think it's more of a career cumulative goal or award for that. My best kill is going to be controversial because it was hard for me to limit one, and each movie has its own sort of like high water mark. Like Kevin Bacon kill, the bed being folded in half kill. There's like, big ones. But I'm going to give it to Freddy vs. Jason for the Rave Massacre, I am calling it. And I know this is probably like between 6 and 12 kids that are getting killed to just one, but the image of him, Jason coming out of that field, burning with fire, getting sprayed down with the keg of beer so that the fire goes out, and then just hacking a path through this crowd of kids with his machete was like...
it's joygasm.
It really did bring genuine joy to me. I don't know what that says, but I remember seeing that in the theater and just sort of beaming. So I'm going to give the best kill to the Rave Massacre sequence in Freddy vs. Jason. There's a lot of great kills to choose from, but that's where I'm giving it. Controversial topic here. Well, you wanted to say the best use of the female anatomy.
I mean, you kind of have to give this award just because that's one of the bread and butters.
Again, it is a template of the series and a template of the horror genre. When you go to see a horror movie, you're going to see things that are not safe or that you're maybe not supposed to see in normal, civilized world, right?
Yeah.
And that means blood and that means boobs.
Yeah.
I think the line for me is how much I feel these girls are being exploited. It's nice kind of seeing some of the behind-the-scenes stuff in I think Part 5, that girl who flashes herself in the mirror saying, "It's showtime." At least knowing in the behind-the-scenes thing that was her idea and that she volunteered it. That's good. What I don't like is when there's a nude scene and the girl is visibly uncomfortable. Okay? And there's a couple of times, especially with the... early in the series with the skinny dipping sequences where you can tell there's a certain stiffness with which the women are removing their clothes. And to be honest, that kind of makes me uncomfortable.
Fair enough.
So hypocritically, I am going to give the Best Nudity Award to the remake of Friday the 13th. As much as I was like slapping my forehead and saying how crazy over the top Basic Instinct softcore porn that big sex scene is at the end, and I still stand by that. It is way too much.
Yeah.
I believe both the actress in that sequence and the actress at the prologue, Sex in the Tent, both knew exactly what the movie was that they were making, and both came to it okay with it.
Yeah.
You couldn't spend that much time on set in that state of undress, I think, and not be
they brought their A game when it came to
that. They were at peace with it. They knew what they were making, and they said okay. In a way that makes it work better. I mean, say what you will about that ridiculous sex scene with Brie. They went all out. They committed 100%.
They did.
It just belonged in a different movie.
Yeah.
This is Skinamax. This is something that fucking 14-year-old boys should be spanking it to. I don't know. So, I don't mind nudity in these movies. I don't mind sex in the movies. It doesn't, shame me. It doesn't make me, feel embarrassed for watching the movies.
Yeah.
As long as I feel like it's done in that, everybody involved knows why it's there. Nobody's being exploited. Nobody is, going to spend the rest of her life thinking, what if my gram sees this?
Yeah.
It was gross and way too much, but I don't think that those girls were exploited. I think they were okay and into it. And for the final award that we're giving out for this episode, the what the fuck moment. And there's no shortage of what the fuck moments. Well, actually, no, I'm just going to give special mention to Crispin Glover's dance in part 4.
Yeah.
That spastic, weird dance that he does, which is apparently just Crispin Glover. It wasn't something he directed to do.
Yeah.
It wasn't a character thing. That was 100% Crispin
Glover.
And it is a sight to behold. It is very strange and almost cringeworthy. You almost kind of want to hide under your chair while that scene is going on.
Yeah.
The fact that he still manages to get laid after that impressive display.
I just would have loved to seen the face on the other actor who was like the female counterpart, and just the look on her face as that started.
So I'm going to give a special mention to that.
Yeah.
But for genuinely like the what the fuck moments, I'm going to give a tie, and it belongs to Jason Goes to Hell.
Yeah.
The two things that I'm going to make reference to is the scene in the jail cell where the bounty hunter is exchanging information for breaking this guy's fingers one at a time. There's no reason for him to do that. It makes him a really hateful and stupid and strange person. And over and above that, I mean, again, I hate to talk continuity in Friday the 13th, but that character who has all the fingers broken in his hand spends the rest of the movie firing guns, fist fighting Jason, completely unfettered by the fact that all of the fingers in his hand.
At least 3 broken fingers.
Yeah, at least 3. And, and also from the same movie, they cribbed that thing from The Hidden, where the evil slug-like entity of Jason is going from mouth to mouth to body to body.
Yeah.
But there was that one scene where it turned into like almost like a half demon figure, and it was scurrying around on the floor, and it entered the corpse of Jason Voorhees' sister, laying on the floor. And that was the moment where I was like, okay, what am I watching, you guys?
Yeah.
Seriously, what the fuck? So that's where my what the fuck award goes. Were there many other things to nominate and to talk about for what the fuck? Yes, but that's where I put it. So it's your turn for the awards.
Well,
best Jason, best kill, best nudity, and what the fuck.
This was hard because I agree with you that Kane Hodder is the sole reason to have any enjoyment out of number 7. He does earn his paycheck, and I bounce back and forth. I don't like 7 so much that it was just hard to say anything overly positive about number 7. So I couldn't put Kane Hodder, who was Jason for 4 of the films, I think.
Yes, 7, 8, 9,
and 10.
And 10. Yeah.
His interpretation of Jason is quite good, but I think all around, once again, it has to go to part 6. He's swift, he's merciless,
merciless.
Merciless. Thank you. He's fun. It's the first real zombie Jason as well.
Yeah.
They set the bar. All right, he's been resurrected.
By lightning.
By lightning. He's got goo coming out of his body. This thing will not die.
Yeah.
This Jason overall is just outright awesome. So there you go.
Part 6.
Best Jason. Best kill. The torture-like violence in the reboot doesn't disturb me as much.
Mm-hmm.
It makes it effective. And really it's 2 kills, but that sleeping bag trap, that is just, it made me realize that Jason planned it, and he wanted the young man to suffer, to see the girl that I would like to think that he at least really likes and loves slowly dying in front of him, and he can't do a thing because the flesh off his leg is essentially gone.
He's no longer just killing trespassers, he's punishing them.
Yeah.
And the first few people that he kills off until it's just, not letting any of them just get away.
Yeah.
He draws it out as much as he can, it seems.
Yeah, and it's like that death stays with you. Like, you are affected by that. And I'm trying to think like another death that really raised that kind of, oh my god. And you can't.
Yeah.
You can't. I love the fact that you mentioned the Ravers scene, because I was grinning ear to ear with you when I saw that. It was like, it's so beautiful. And even how it starts.
I have tears in my eyes. What's happening to me?
Yeah. I mean, that stoner getting it. It's just like, yeah. Aching. But like I said, that opening sequence with the sleeping bag, it's so painful to watch her die. You just like, wow. Wow. So, I don't know. That best kill, it still does it for me.
Yeah, that character didn't feel as real world to me. I mean, I would like to believe that there are women like that exist who are so, like, both incredibly attractive and seem to run on a currency of pure sexuality. It was all that woman could do to keep her boobs in her shirt. Like, I don't know if these women really exist in the world, but if they do, rankandreview@gmail.com.
Nice. I'm sure your wife would like that.
She's not going to listen to this. Who are you kidding?
Okay. Best use of the female anatomy. I agree with you that I'm sure a lot of the women reluctantly, I mean, I'm sure they got paid rather well, but you can tell that they were uncomfortable throwing off their shirt. And that
does kill it for me.
It does. It does really sort of like, oh. Yeah. I think they did an ingenious way doing it, as well as mocking it, is that holodeck scene in Jason 10.
Yeah.
And the fact that Jason takes in the sleeping bag and proceeds to walk them back and forth, which is not the first time he's done that.
No. It was a nice callback.
Yeah.
For just in case people don't remember what we're talking about here. Yeah. In the holodeck, they tried to recreate 1980 Crystal Lake for Jason to buy themselves some time to escape. And yes, two very attractive camp counselors appear before Jason.
Yeah.
One holding a six-pack of beer, the other one smoking a joint. Yeah. They both simultaneously strip their shirts off and say, would you like to have some premarital sex? Or
we love premarital sex.
Yeah. It was acknowledging the entire series for everything both good and bad was celebrated in that moment.
And you wanted actors that did not look uncomfortable.
They were totally cool with it.
They were totally cool with it. And to which I applaud all three. The fact that the scene ends with them giggling as they're beaten to death in their sleeping bags.
Ow! Stop that!
Best what the fuck moment. And yes, Jason Goes to Hell has at least two, to which you go, what? And there's probably a whole lot more. Yeah. But ladies and gentlemen, once again, I bring it back to two words. Crispin Glover. There's more than just the dance sequence that you go, what? The whole imaginary computer thing, you're like, what? But every single time before that dance sequence starts, you're just like, ladies and gentlemen.
Crispin Glover.
Stop what you're doing. Even if you're doing some sort of mathematical equation, stop. And behold the beauty of Crispin Glover. Crispin Glover, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah. Just, wow.
Yes, I'm a fan of Crispin Glover, too. Again, I don't know that I think he's an amazing actor, but he's always an interesting presence.
Yes.
Just to give one more throwaway for what the fuck, as it just popped into my head when you were talking about it. I don't think we can really overstate how stupid and bizarre and what the fuck the climactic moments of Jason Goes to Manhattan is. The whole thing about the sewers being flushed with toxic waste, and Jason speaking for the first and only time in the series before he is melted into his child self. Like, good God, you guys, that's just bad.
Yeah.
People on set had to know that was bad while they were shooting it. But so we've come to the end. Any regrets? Is your dog still alive? Take Marley's pulse.
He's still here. I feel very tired, but I knew I would be. I don't think if I see Grizzly over the top of death, it'll be too soon, along with big-breasted women. I'm glad I did this. I think it's going to be a while before I watch a Friday the 13th film now, but...
Well, maybe my next birthday we can tackle a different franchise or something. But I thought it's a very nice way to sort of celebrate the 1-year anniversary of Rank and Review. So thank you for doing that.
My pleasure.
Enjoy slashing and hacking and boobery, kids. Friday the 13th may not be high art, but it is what it is, and I am no longer ashamed to call myself a fan.
Yeah.
Success, victory, Lee and Larry versus Jason Voorhees, and we'll let the listeners decide who won there. So I hope you guys enjoyed this very special edition of Rank and Review. For the record, aside from the Freddy vs. Jason in Part 5, The other Friday the 13th films may show up again on Rank and Review in our other regular episodes. This was a very special sort of edition in which we explored one franchise. And maybe we'll do it again someday. In the meantime, I'd just like to thank everyone again for tuning in to Rank and Review. This is Larry Parsons, your host and random Canadian. As usual, you can find us on Facebook, you can find us on iTunes, and you can write us at rankandreview@gmail.com. Thanks, you guys.